regardless of whether or not, they liked you, they hated it, whatever, it doesn't matter. That was a success because it's moving you towards the larger overarching purpose of expressing yourself charismatically with more consistency going forward, and thereby enabling you to acquire the experience or data points that are needed to start to see the patterns emerge, familiarize yourself with the conventions of these types of interactions, and move things forward very consistently without even thinking about it, right? Ultimately, that's what we want to do. Ultimately, you want to get to a point where it feels like you're not doing anything. That is the peak. That is the holy grail. That is the pinnacle of achievement when it comes to improving your social skills, is you just kind of go out and be yourself. Right? That's the conventional wisdom that your mom told you when you were in high school. Just be yourself, honey. Well, unfortunately, you weren't being yourself. That what you thought of as being yourself was actually yourself as filtered through the lens of a whole host of negative social counter conditionings that you accrued over a period of many years, starting probably when you went into the educational system. Right? And then as you become older, you start to get affected by the media, by your peer group, by corporate culture, et cetera, until you get to this point where now what you think of as your actual natural expressiveness is actually quite stifled. So you want to get to a point where not only that, but you now have enough familiarity with technique that it's sort of it's ingrained into your unconscious competence, and you no longer have to think much about it as you're doing it. When you have both of those things, when you have actually learned to become truly confident in the idea that the things you are saying have value inherently, when you become truly confident that you are enough, you are likable, you are valuable, you are worthy of admiration by anyone who has chemistry with you and aligns with your values. You are worthy, you are sex worthy for people that you want to date. You are a worthy person to do business with if you're looking for clients. When you believe that, like again, the products that you are selling bring value to other people. It doesn't matter if they want to buy it or not. That wasn't for them, right? That's when you become truly confident, and that's when you can get to that place. You move from doing to being. I think that's pretty much what everyone here would agree. That's kind of that sounds like the best outcome, right? Where I don't really have to do anything. I just go out, I just kind of be myself, and I just notice, oh, lo and behold, I'm back home with a new friend. And I just kind of didn't even do anything. That happens to me with a lot of regularity these days. I'll just be out doing my thing, hanging out with my buddies at a place, and I just randomly find myself talking to somebody, and then I randomly find myself getting closer with that individual, and then I randomly find myself in a van, and then I randomly find myself in a hot tub, and then I randomly find myself, doing a variety of other things. I don't know what he said, but I'm just going to let that sleeping dog lie. And you randomly find yourself cleaning up like lube off the floor in the morning, which is the worst part. The cleanup is always the worst. I had a tenant move in to my home. I rent this room out, and I'm giving him the tour, and I'm like, yeah. He's like, so what's the vibe here? I'm like, yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm 46 years old, so I'm not like partying every night. I'd say I only have like a weird orgy up there about twice a year now. And he's like, haha, he like laughs, and I'm like, he doesn't know that it's real. And so when it does happen, I'm like, I told you, dude, twice a year, man. Okay, it's not that bad, all right? Like, it's not certainly not as bad as when I was in my late 20s. So, but anyway, so again, I just find myself doing that, and that's the aim. That's what you want to get to, right? And how do you get there? That begs the question, like, how do you get there where you don't have to think about it too much? You just go out and you're just being yourself, and you're naturally attractive. Well, when I first started, the conventional wisdom around how to be confident was what? Well, that's the real conventional wisdom. I mean, the conventional wisdom in this development community was what? Fake it till you make it. But at the same time, there was still a certain sense that at any time the mask could slip. Or, for example, back in the day, my initial approach, and this was many people's initial approach back then, was I didn't know what to say. so like, what do I say? What do I say? I run out of things to say. How many people in here have that issue? I run out of things to say, or have had in the past. So I was like, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to memorize a variety of like scripts and gambits and essentially routines that kind of like comic bits almost in many ways, but some of them had like various elements of NLP and were designed to introduce romantic elements in a sort of smooth way and stuff like this. And I was always very good growing up at rote memorization. And so I would just memorize these things. And I'd even practice them in the mirror until like the delivery seemed naturalistic and spontaneous. And I had hours of this stuff. Like I could literally go and speak to somebody for several hours and have it just be routine after routine after routine after routine, and delivered in such a way where, again, it seemed spontaneous. I was coming up with it. I was struggling to think of what to say. I'd have like fake, pauses in there and things like that. And that worked great. But here's the question. What happens when that runs out? And then you're hanging out with this person and they're like, okay, what next? And you're just like, they're like, okay, this guy's just kind of a fucking boring tool, And so Owen used to talk about this as being sort of like drawing ripped abs on a fat belly. It's like, look at the ripped abs. Look at the ripped abs. But in reality, it's purely cosmetic, right? So I'd be freaking out, hoping the mask wouldn't slip. So there's definitely something to be said for acting as if, right? For those of you who are not natural extroverts, the idea of like going out to a party and meeting and mingling and talking to people can seem repulsive. Yeah, terrifying would be a word, or just like very distasteful, but instead of like hovering on the side of the room hoping somebody's going to come up to you, what do? You put a smile on your face and you force yourself to go up and act as if. Act as if I'm confident. Act as if I'm having a good time. Act as if I'm enthusiastic. And for a lot of people, that very behavior can be exhausting, right? Like they feel they have a small reservoir of emotional energy, let's just say, where that's depleted pretty quickly. And then they're like, I got to get out of here. Like that. I'm just done. I'm done with this whole damn party, But I think the thing is, eventually, a lot of people, they figure out that many of those people in that room at that party feel the exact same way. And it's not just you. This is in some ways the human condition. And you understand, like, look, I'm going to commit myself to this. It'll get easier over time, but that might be a while. But if you have enough emotional leverage over yourself where I'm going to do whatever it takes, it doesn't matter how long it's going to take, because it's going to take as long as is required. That's kind of like saying, like, how long will it take for me to get jacked in the gym? It's like, well, as long as is required. And there's going to be setbacks. How long does it take me to make $1 million? As long as it takes. It doesn't fucking matter. If you want to achieve the goal, you have to commit. You have to decide internally. And again, Tony Robbins talked about this at length, this idea of emotional leverage. For me personally, I was in a series of very, very bad relationships where I just said no more. And like after my girlfriend finally dumped my ass, it's the same old sob story in many cases. I was like, look, I don't want to ever be in this position again where I feel like I'm in a relationship that's actively detrimental to my well-being, but I'm too afraid to leave because I don't believe that I have the ability to find someone else in a relatively short period of time. At least not somebody as good or better. I'm just cast adrift, hoping that I get lucky again, and at the whim of the environment, and hoping I stumble upon someone at work again or in my social circle again. And by the way, how many of you have actually dated somebody from like your social circle or from work in the past? I mean, this is absolutely terrible for a number of reasons. Why? Well, what if it goes bad? You got to see them all the time. This goes back to having a scarcity mentality. And by the way, one of the things that come from, and we'll kind of get into this and dig into this more in a second, one of the things that comes along with doing not, or being not doing, is having that deep-seated understanding of the value proposition you're bringing, right? It's like, look, I'm for some, I'm not for others. Some people are going to think I'm really cool and really funny and really attractive, and other people are going to think I'm just like a weirdo that needs to be removed from their vicinity. And that's fine. They are entitled to that belief and opinion. I no longer begrudge people of this. And again, you need to arrive at that. I can't take the rejection. I can't take the rejection. You need to stop looking at it as rejection and start reframing it in your mind as lack of chemistry. Now again, this is the prerequisite for that though, is believing or knowing that you're not making like blatant mechanical errors. Because there are ways to go up and just screw it up. Right, and we'll discuss those at length when we start to get into more of the practical aspects. But remember, there's two sides to the coin of charisma, right? On the one hand, yeah, you got those mechanical nuts and bolts. People will learn that stuff pretty easy. It doesn't take if you have a modicum of intelligence, you will understand the mechanics of how to approach somebody. And make yourself like socially relevant to them so they like you, at least they like the vibe you're throwing down, and how to move it forward. Like, okay, what happens when this circumstance comes up? What do I say? Okay, I say this, that tends to work. Okay, what are the steps? That's pretty easy. All right. What's more difficult is understanding how to, again, craft that vertical vibe that is compelling. And that's fun and interesting and different. Different is the word here, right? Now, a big part of that comes from, like we said a moment ago, adding energy, not leeching energy. And they're having fun and they're just like enjoying their night. They're in the flow. They're dancing. They're catching up with their friends. They're throwing back a drink. And then some person comes up saying some weird fucking shit like, hello, how's your night? And you're like, and most people are fairly polite, although some people at a certain point, they're so sick of this nonsense, they just have developed an autopilot reaction where they just ignore it. Because they know that person is like, that same person who goes up asking those invasive questions and doesn't add any energy, they know that person can't keep that up very long. And they'll probably just like give up within 30 seconds. So why even engage it? Just be like, boom. And then they'll slink away. And they'll go and they'll be more down, and they might summon up the courage to do it to someone else, and then they'll go more down. It's like, so no, you need to first be grounded in yourself if you want to fly. You have to have a strong base internally if you want to be more than yourself. Okay, so one of the big things is you got to assume familiarity. Because remember, it's an autopilot reaction when you get that skepticism look. Because they don't know that you're cool yet. They don't know. Nobody knows anything about you. I mean, dude, many times back in the day, I'd be like, do you know who the fuck I am? No, they don't know that. Nobody knows who you are or your style or your history or anything about you until you bring it to their ass. So you can't take it personally when they don't respond perfectly right off the bat. In fact, if they respond perfectly right off the bat, sometimes I'm kind of like wary of that. Like, what's wrong with them? Are they fucked up? Like, why are they so receptive? Of course, some people are just friendly, and some people just like the energy right off the bat. But and that's kind of a joke. I don't actually think that, but it's always it's a happy surprise. When they react positive. Oh, okay, cool. So act as if. Assume familiarity. Act like you've known them for years. Act like you belong there. Act like you are the best. The best around. We talked about that a moment ago when you're waiting in line to get into the venue. Act like you belong there. Don't be like, please, may I come in, sir? Just be like, again, chopping it up with your buddy. And then when they come to like, hey, how many? Oh, hey, as though you forgot you were even in line. Like, you know damn well you're in line. You know what you're there for. Act as if. Oh, hey, man, what's going on, dude? Oh, yeah. Oh, cool. Hey, cheers. Thanks, man. Yeah, it's just us. Roll in. And going even more fundamental, I think that when we're talking about fake it till you make it, and this is something that's really overlooked because it seems so simplistic that it gets dismissed, that whole idea of motion creating emotion. So what did I say? When I'm out, almost never are you going to see me there like, like stone-faced, stiff, held tension, looking around. One could see how I might be like that. because I'm like, maybe I'm like surveying the clients. Okay, where are they? Okay, yes, very serious here. We're observing, we're taking notes, we're going to give detailed feedback. Okay, yeah, that is very well the case. However, if I go like this, that's going to inhibit me when it's time to go from observe and coach mode to get in interactions with them, to do demonstration of how I approach people and stuff like that. That's going to fuck me up. So again, I will always bare minimum be just like tapping my foot to the music. It's keeping consciously loose, and again, not only that, laughing with my friends that I'm there with, like with the other coaches, even the students, like cracking jokes. Yo, what's the most weird shit we could do right now? Yeah, let's do that. Okay, ready? We're gonna do it. And we're like laughing. Why? I want to prime my physiology to interact. I do not want to have to turn it on. That is one of the simplest things that you can do, but very few people do this. Very often, I'm sure some of you will do this. I'll see it later. You're going to be shuffling around the venue with a stiff, physiology, stone-faced demeanor, and you're going to try to bring that to the table, and it's not going to work. It's not going to work. And by the way, in a little bit here, we'll probably do some exercises to kind of work on loosening that up. But by the way, loosening that up, like what we call facial armoring, where you have that sad face, serious, anxious, deadpan, that takes time. And it's important to understand that you have to persist in that, because it didn't happen to you overnight, right? We're talking about decades of conditioning that's causing you to be careful with how you use energy in your face. So you get sad, anxious, deadpan. Serious, anxious, deadpan, sad face. Serious, anxious, deadpan. And so what's the problem with that, though? Why is serious, anxious, deadpan not something that's good?
It's not fun.
Well, it's frightening. If you're talking to someone else and they can't tell what you're feeling internally, that's a potential danger signal. Very important to let that go. But just because, again, there's a difference between knowledge and knowing. You're not going to drop decades of, it's unrealistic to think you're going to drop decades of counter conditioning and suddenly become facially free, because you understand intellectually it would be beneficial for you to do so, right? You got to persist with that. So again, very important though to stay loose, because like I said, that onset of physical tension can happen slowly and subliminally, and the next thing you know, you're just in the grip of it. There's not much that can be done about it at that point, right? Now, by the way, so again, that's kind of like the act as if. Like, how would I acting as if I were enjoying myself in this environment? Like, because you might go, like, who was the guy who said he doesn't like the club environment? Right. So you're like, I do fine if I'm talking to somebody, well, I'm hiking, or I meet somebody at, just in a random encounter in the daytime. But when I go into that nightlife environment and I hear that music and I see those flashing epilepsy-inducing lights, and I hear this like pounding barrage on my eardrums that's causing me to have like hearing damage. I mean, it's not a good environment. I don't think it's a good environment for humans to be in. In fact, it's like a war zone or something. It's like, it's like unhealthy. Not to mention everyone's drinking poison, acting a fool, an imbecile. Like, it's not a great environment. I understand that, And you might feel like, okay, I don't enjoy it here. Now, what could you do, though? If you change your physiology to be in a state where that it would be if you were enjoying it, over time, you might develop different associations. Like for me, I'd go into those environments back in the day. I mean, I started out mostly going to pubs, bars, lounges, things like that. And then when I started traveling around with my colleagues, and we started going to these like large, again, like Live, for example, like some of the loudest nightclubs on planet Earth, places in Sweden where like literally if you do not wear earplugs, you're gonna have ringing tinnitus damage like that very night. You can't even hear the other person, like even screaming directly in their ear, you can't understand them. After going to those environments, I'm like, wow, this is very challenging. This is very difficult. But I realized if I wanted to be a well-rounded person, when it comes to socializing, I'm going to have to familiarize myself with that environment. And then moreover, I'm going to have to learn to actually enjoy it on a certain level and develop different associations. Whereas before, I'm like, okay, this is intimidating, challenging, stifling. Now I go in there, I walk into like any big, nightclub, like, Omnia or Live or whatever. And I walk in there, I'm like, yes, It's like I'm walking into Disneyland. It's like I'm walking in, like I got to the front of the line at Space Mountain because I'm like, oh yeah, this is where I have success. This is where I have fun. But how did I do that? Well, first of all, again, it starts as something as simple as acting as if. Just boom, and then just cracking jokes with your friends. So you don't have to turn it on. So again, it's communicated by your demeanor. It's not about whether they see it or not. It's do you see it or not? Because if you do not believe in the product, you are not going to be able to close people on your product. If you're selling something and you do not believe that product will benefit their life, you're going to feel like a fraud. You're going to feel like an imposter. You're going to feel like you are getting something over on them. You're a little weasel who's trying to get over on other people by selling them some shit they don't fucking need. But you get money. They get this piece of shit product that's not beneficial to them. Right? That's what's going through your mind, like on a subconscious level, when you don't understand the value proposition you're approaching somebody. So that's a huge part of this, right? It's a huge part of this. So again, when you attain competence, though, confidence comes naturally. Remember this formula. Experience breeds competence, which breeds confidence. That's the formula. Experience breeds competence, which breeds confidence. I think that one thing, though, that is a challenge for a lot of people is how to slog through that middle ground where you don't see result yet. And being able to trust the process and be like, look, if I just keep going and keep doing this, I'm going to accrue enough data points that I'll start to see the patterns emerge. I'll alter my behavior enough that I become comfortable with these new stylistic communication choices, and it'll become second nature. And I'll start to see like massive results, like exponentially increasing result. But you have, much like the New Year's resolution shows at the gym, a lot of people have difficulty slogging through that initial pain period where they don't see a result, right? So we can talk a little bit about how to get there. This is a very famous self-help author, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. He wrote a book called Flow. He talked about the experience of a flow state, which is basically where you lose yourself in the activity and you simply seem to transcend your normal limits of ability. And this is what we're talking about when we talk about moving from doing to being, right? So that flow state, it produces a peak experience, right? A radical shift in ability, quite frankly. And when you see somebody operating in that state, it's just, you can just tell it's objectively superior. Like you're witnessing an objectively superior performance. And when you're out, this is what you want to hit, where you're not micromanaging everything from moment to moment. The intellect ceases to be this barrier between inner and outer and becomes a bridge from inner higher energies to external expression. And it's happening through you, right? You're not even thinking necessarily about what to say, what to do. It's happening through you. Now, there's certain qualities that are characteristic or prerequisites for that flow state. Number one, there needs to be a skill at hand. Number two, there needs to be a challenge to that skill. Number three, the challenge needs to be high enough that it is seriously challenging, but not so high that it's impossible. Number four, you need to have, and this is important, you need to have a familiarity with the skill that is sufficient, that it no longer requires much of the intellect's conscious attention, right? And then at that point, you can just kind of let go. Now, here's the thing. For many people, it can feel, especially those who are accustomed to analytical thinking and logic, when they finally do let go, allow that synergistic wisdom of the whole to take over, it can feel terrifying because it feels like you've lost control. And in a sense, you have, because you're no longer relying on the intellect to guide things. You're relying on deeper, fundamental, intuitive energies to inform your communication. So that's what you're aiming for, ultimately. Now, people don't trust their intellect or their intuition because it's basically intuition, and employing intuition is an apprehension of subconscious processes that are not really available to you cognitively. Like, you can't witness what's going on. It'll just produce impulses of things to say and do. And when we talk about self-amusement, generally it means relinquishing that intellectual control in the moment, letting go of that predictive control to gain in-process control, right? That's what you're aiming for. Ultimately, that's what you want. You want to let go of that predictive control, and you want to attain an in-process control.